guys, I'm Steph.
And I'm Richard. Got a question today from Owl Hoot. Can you talk more about eating disorders and thinness in South Korea? Also, do natives there call it Korea, or do they full out say South Korea? What do you see here on the ground in terms of your observations of people or young people regarding thinness?
You see a lot of thin people. I will say that. You do have, on average, Asian body types tend to be a little bit more on the thin side and generally a little bit more on the shorter side.
Frames are smaller here indeed, at least compared to where we are from. At least what I see with people in their early 20s, I wouldn't say that it looks like eating disorders. There might be a small portion of people that don't eat enough, but it's really just in general. They're smaller this way and smaller this way. Body type is like this.
I personally see a lot of it also, especially amongst the girls that I taught when I taught at college, and even amongst my classmates that I see walking and other people that I know walking around university. You do also see a lot of eating disorders, or shall I say, bad dieting habits.
For example,
K-pop has been hugely influential into the whole diet scene because people want to look like their favorite K-pop stars. And K-pop stars, if you have ever followed K-pop, are known for their extreme diets.
Do you know one in particular that you're referring to?
Well, there's one, I believe it's Nine Muses. They had a diet where they took a cup and they filled the cup like 2/3 with rice, and then the other third they could put whatever else they wanted in, and that was their meal.
How big was the cup?
Not a big cup. Or like a 3-cup meal where you could have like 3 little paper Dixie cups of, like, I saw one group did that. A lot of people eat just hard-boiled eggs or sweet potato. There's been some pretty extreme diets out there. This one is very controversial because I find myself more than anything just like sticking my foot in my mouth and trying to keep silent on this matter in this country.
I think most importantly, this is not a Korean-only issue. This is an issue that's inflicted with every country or every ethnicity or culture in the world. By far, not one place is more inflicted. Did I just say inflicted?
This is across the board, across the cultures, a problem that is a problem of our society, and not so much a
global society.
A global society, and not so much a problem of Korea or the USA or whatever country you are from.
And I also want to make clear that by us talking about, oh, in Korea they look like this, or oh, in Korea they do that, we are not trying to judge what they do here as if we have some sort of moral high ground versus what they do or they know or how they behave or practice or eat.
And even then, it's not across the board. No two people are the same. Right. You have a lot of diversity because it's a country that we're talking about.
First thing that crossed my mind was, you know what? This place has more and more chubby people. Fast food is popping up all over the place here. You know, like, I swear, this place reminds me more and more of the US because there are people that don't have an eating disorder. They have an eating disorder on the opposite spectrum where they are eating too much and not getting enough exercise, and part of that is because they have too much work to do during the week and they're too tired when they get out of work, you know, and then they don't have enough time, so they go in, they eat fast food. Wonder what country that sounds like. Wouldn't you say watching some of the K-pop videos and seeing how thin some of these idols are puts tremendous pressure on the populace here?
Intense, tremendous pressure. I can't even talk because it's just so much like, oh my gosh, it makes me want to scream.
Stephanie's
sometimes.
feeling the pressure.
It doesn't matter how small you are. I have known girls who are extremely thin, and even K-pop stars who are extremely thin, who have talked about how they're going on a diet before they release their new album. And it makes me almost sick inside.
Yeah, we were watching the Prime Minister and not to single out Yoona. It's Yoona in that one, right?
Yes.
She looks thin.
She is.
To the point where if she got any thinner, she'd be too thin.
She's bordering on it for me, but yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to judge her. I'm just saying what I see. If you're watching it, and if some of the people who are watching this watch that, millions of people in this country are also watching that on television.
Yeah, I mean, you see
that's just one person.
That's just one person. You see extremely thin people, all the magazines, advertisements are everywhere. You have the chopstick legs is one of the ideals here. Girls want to have legs that look like chopsticks. The S-line is very popular. You want the S-line. The lollipop look. People want to look like lollipops. They want to have the cute little face, but like the big head with the cute little face and the skinny body. I'm serious. It just
And not just in Korea. I feel like even myself a little bit, put myself on the chopping block here, I've always been a couple of pounds thicker than I want to be. I don't have an eating disorder by any stretch, but I exercise a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I went exercising last night, I ran 6 kilometers. I don't feel pressure, but I definitely feel like I wish that I was a little bit... So I know what some of these younger people might be feeling. They just might not be going about it the right way.
But you also see a lot of picking on people. This is where you see a lot more of the bullying. When I first came to Korea, I was smaller than I am now, which is maybe a little bit hard to believe.
Well, you were 22 then, so...
I was 22 then.
That kind of makes sense.
I was thinner. I would get picked on by my fellow co-teachers or my students.
Why? Because you were...
Because they were just, any day that I looked a little bit bloated, they were like, oh, fat teacher.
When you were 22?
Yeah, are you having a baby, pregnant? Mom?
They used to say that to you?
Yeah.
They used to say that you were pregnant.
If I had an Empire waist shirt that showed some fullness in here, they were like, oh, baby.
It still is ridiculous that 2 pounds heavier than normal would make people think so differently about you.
Another thing is clothing sizes. I don't know how much you follow this, but clothing sizes, for example, for women are very small. Or you have the one size fits all idea, which is actually small. It's actually really hard to buy clothes here if you are slightly bigger. For example, for me, I can find shirts, okay, usually, no problem there, but pants? I have a hard time finding pants in this country.
Why? Because they're not big enough for you?
Exactly.
Really?
Mama's got too much of a caboose.
Daddy likes mama's caboose.
I'm glad. I walked into the stores and looked at skinny jeans, and no joke, they are the size of my hand. The legs are the size of my hand, like this. Can you imagine legs that thick?
Sometimes I wake up early and I go for a run at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. and I see a group of people doing aerobics. Together there's 40 or 50 of them in a huge sort of class. It's all women and they're all probably 50 or older. Across the spectrum, there's so many different things going on, including some people who are too lazy and some people don't eat well enough. And then there's a lot of people who probably are doing the right thing and there's a little people over here who aren't minding their health. I don't know if that has to do with economic success. I don't know if that has to do with laziness. I don't know what it has to do with, but...
Personal preference? You don't know.
Household by household, different things are going on.
You'd have to walk a mile in their shoes or a kilometer, and that's kind of hard to do.
Kilometer? Are you counting in kilometers now?
But you do have a small number of women, and I've mentioned it before, girls, young women that I have known who maybe for years somebody just made fun of them and poked fun at them and were like, oh, you're chubby, because here it's not so taboo to call someone chubby or fat. You can just go ahead and say, oh, you're looking a little chubby right there. They point it out, and I have known girls who, it makes me sick. This whole thing just really, really bothers me because I've known so many girls with eating disorders. But I know, for example, I had a former student who lived abroad. When she was living abroad, very skinny girl, and she's like, oh, I'm gaining weight living in the USA, so I'm going to go on a detox cleanse, and she didn't eat for the course of a week, except for these detox lemon thing shake drinks. I've also heard of girls going on milk diets where they only drink milk and eat sweet potato. I've heard eating only once a day. I've also known girls...
I've heard eating once a day.
Yes, I've heard that a lot.
That's a slightly more common one.
This is a hard topic for me because when I was in university at one point in time, I lived in an apartment with a bunch of people, a bunch of girls who actually all had some sort of eating disorder. And I was the only one at the time who didn't. I had a friend who almost passed out in the school store because she just quit eating. And she'd look at me and say, Stephanie, I wish I could weigh 90 pounds like you do. And I said, sweetie, I haven't weighed 90 pounds since I was a freshman in high school.
How much did you weigh then?
I weighed 110 then. I was like, I don't weigh 90 pounds.
So she was a bit delusional in how much you actually weighed.
True, and I could step on a scale, but it still didn't matter. And I also, when I was teaching, I had a girl that you could tell she walked in and she was scary thin. And you could tell, I wanted to just, put her in a hospital and, feed her. It's hard. I mean, I could see the marks on her hands from where she would, eat and then, throw it up afterwards. Is that bulimia? Bulimic. But she was anorexic and bulimic. And I knew that.
Well, I think that just goes to show that this is not any particular culture, but this is a sort of problem universally that we're dealing with as a global society that needs more attention.
And it sucks. It's something that, like, people shouldn't judge other people. You shouldn't be like, hey, you're fat, or, you know, like, the way that we view women now, there's this whole, like, real women campaign. And I think that that's great in some ways, but it's also negative because there's other people like me who are just naturally skinny. And it's also like, you're not a real woman and we're getting skinny shamed.
It's a crazy world out there. Yeah, I mean, you eat a lot.
Yeah, I love food. I'm a total foodie.
Yeah, and so...
And I hate to exercise, but I have a high metabolism.
Right.
So that's it for today's Life in Korea.
Yeah, Owl Hoot, thanks for your question. If you have a question you'd like us to answer or at least hash out between the two of us right here for you guys on YouTube, drop us a note in the comments. You can drop us a note on our blog or head to facebook.com/HallyuBack. That's our Facebook page. Write us a note on our wall.
And like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel for Asian drama and Life in Korea videos.
That's it for today's Life in Korea.
Experience it.
We do call it Korea. We live in Korea. That's why I write Korea.
That's why we talk about living in Korea.
They prefer Korea versus South Korea because, one, I think historically this place was one Korea for the longest time until about 1950 when they split up. Two, they don't really have the word South Korea in the Korean language. I think they only have Hanguk or Daehaminguk. That's really plays into what they would say or how they would translate in their mind when they go to say it in English. A boy wrote in one of his journals for my class that when he went to the United States as a middle schooler or maybe high school, he was so surprised and a little dismayed that people in America were calling it South Korea because that's not what people here say at all.
Really? I've heard people here call it South Korea because they do designate it from North Korea, but they feel that it's still the true Korea, which I think goes into what you were saying. You win! Okay.